Welcome back to today's explainer. You know, if you've been following along with our journey, we definitely cover a whole lot of ground. Today, we are diving right into day 56, which is an absolute masterclass on bug bounty hunting. So let's just jump right in and check out this foundational roadmap that the source material lays out for all you aspiring hunters out there.
So what actually makes a master bug bounty hunter, right? Like, is it just having some crazy raw technical skill? Or is it maybe just pure luck? Well, looking at the source material, it turns out it's actually a super structured, almost scientific kind of quest. We're talking about the massive difference between just blindly poking at a firewall, crossing your fingers and hoping something breaks, versus executing a really calculated surgical strike. It takes a strategic blend of solid planning, ethical execution, knowing exactly what environment you're in, and keeping meticulous records. And the masterclass we're exploring today breaks this whole journey down into very distinct, actionable phases.
Here's the roadmap we'll be following. First, the hunting methodology, then ethics and responsible disclosure, followed by the bug bounty platforms, and finally, documenting your workflow.
Okay, let's dive into this first section, the hunting methodology.
So the masterclass explicitly breaks this initial phase down into two distinct steps. Step 1 is the methodology. This is basically your theoretical framework, your rules of engagement. Think of it kind of like your overarching philosophy as a hacker. It answers the really big questions, like what kinds of targets are you actually going after? Are you hunting for logic flaws in web apps, or are you scanning massive infrastructures looking for outdated software? It completely defines your scope and your strategy before you even think about touching a keyboard. Then we have step 2, which is the hunting workflow. And this is where all that theory transforms into actionable, repeatable tasks. For example, if your methodology says you need to heavily prioritize finding hidden assets, well, your workflow is the exact sequence of tools and scripts you're going to run to actually find them. It's the specific parameters you're feeding into your fuzzing tools, the checklists you run through when you're intercepting traffic in Burp Suite, and your exact order of operations for the recon phase. The core insight here from the source material is pretty huge. You just cannot execute a successful, scalable workflow if you don't have a rock-solid methodology underneath it. A lot of beginners, they just jump straight into the workflow. They fire up a terminal, run a bunch of random automated scanners they found online, and they just end up with noise instead of actual results. Nailing down the theory and the strategy first is absolutely crucial because it focuses the hunt and honestly keeps you from burning out.
But what happens once you actually find a bug? That brings us to section 2, ethics and responsible disclosure.
Because here's the thing, finding a bug is really only half the battle. Reporting it the right way, that's the other half. Responsible disclosure is all about navigating an organization's specific rules of engagement, which you'll usually hear referred to as their scope and safe harbor policies. It dictates exactly how you communicate clearly with their security teams and make sure the vulnerability is handled securely, without putting any real user data at risk. Any master hunter knows that a brilliant, genius technical find can be completely ruined by a sloppy or unethical disclosure report. Imagine you find a massive remote code execution vulnerability. Now, an amateur might try to dump the whole database just to prove they can, but that actively harms the company and totally violates the bounty program's rules. A true professional sticking to responsible disclosure will execute a totally benign command, something like running Who Am I or ID, just to prove the concept. Then they stop right there and immediately document the exact steps to reproduce it. Because if you breach that scope, access data you shouldn't or, heaven forbid, decide to tweet about the vulnerability before it's patched, you don't just lose your payout, you are risking severe legal action and getting permanently banned from the platforms. So in this whole ecosystem, mastering the ethical reporting process, writing really clear summaries, and maintaining a professional relationship with those triage teams is exactly what gets a bug validated and actually paid out.
So where does all this action take place? Let's step right into the arena with Section 3, the bug bounty platforms.
Now, the masterclass doesn't just leave you with generalities. It points you straight to the actual arenas where the modern bug bounty economy operates. The syllabus focuses specifically on 3 big ones: HackerOne, BugCrowd, and Integrity. By looking at these specific environments, you really get a feel for how real-world programs are hosted and how different triage teams do their thing. And it's important to note, these aren't just carbon copies of each other. They each have their own totally unique ecosystems and cultures. Take HackerOne, for instance. It's a massive player, tons of enterprise and government programs, and it has its own specific reputation system based on your signal and impact. Then you've got BugCrowd. They use a really structured vulnerability rating taxonomy, or VRT, which standardizes exactly how different bugs are prioritized and paid out, so there's way less ambiguity when you hit submit. And Integrity, which is heavily rooted in the European market, has this awesome, highly engaged community focus and offers unique programs catering to different sets of global compliance standards. Grasping the nuances of these platforms is an absolute must. Why? Well, a vulnerability that might just get flagged as a duplicate on one platform's public program could be a critical, high-paying find on a private, invite-only program on another platform. So knowing how to navigate these dashboards, manage your profile reputation, and interact with the triage teams on HackerOne, BugCrowd, and Integrity is literally a fundamental survival skill for any serious hunter.
And this brilliantly illustrates why we need Section 4, documenting your workflow.
So this entire masterclass ultimately culminates in a very tangible capstone project, your bug bounty workflow documentation. Now let's be real for a second. Documentation is a massive pain point for a lot of highly technical folks. Right? I mean, it is way more exciting to be deep in the command line breaking things than it is to sit there writing notes. But this is exactly what separates the top 1% of hunters from everyone else. This project pushes you to take your unique methodology, your step-by-step execution, and your platform navigation rules and completely codify them. By getting it all written down, whether you're building a massive vault in Obsidian, setting up relational databases in Notion, or just keeping a meticulously organized Markdown file, you stop relying on your memory. Because let's face it, human memory is flawed. When you're staring at a super complex web application at 2 a.m., it is so incredibly easy to forget to check for a specific CORS misconfiguration or, skip testing an IDOR on some obscure API endpoint. Creating this personalized, repeatable playbook lets you actually scale your hunting efforts. It means every single time you approach a new target, you've got this living, breathing checklist ensuring you have total coverage. You aren't ever guessing what to do next. You're simply executing your own customized plan. And the best part? As you learn new techniques, you just update the docs. So your workflow literally gets sharper and more effective with every single hunt.
Which leaves us with one really vital question to think about. Is your workflow actually ready for the hunt? We've explored the entire roadmap today, moving all the way from the foundational philosophy of a hunting methodology, right through the absolutely critical nature of ethical, responsible disclosure. We mapped out the distinct landscapes of the major platforms where all these battles take place, and finally, we highlighted the undeniable power of documenting your systems so you literally never miss a vulnerability. I really hope this explainer has illuminated just how structured, deliberate, and deeply strategic this masterclass approach is. Now, it's over to you. Take this framework, start building out your own documentation playbook, and get ready for the hunt. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.